Good evening. I will call to order the Finance Committee meeting on March 6, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. We have three items this evening on the agenda. We have a mid-year transfer request. We have a request to increase the Public Safety Revolving Fund. And also we have a proposed amendment order for the Senior Citizens Tax Work-Off Program. I will begin with the first item on the agenda, which is order number 23-100-8806, communication from Mayor Vigent, together with the mid-year transfer request totaling $1,643,050 from various departments for FY 2023. And I will begin by reading the letter submitted by the Mayor. Honorable President Ossing and Councilors, enclosed for your review and approval are mid-year transfer requests totaling $1,643,050 from several city departments, as well as letters from department heads detailing the purposes as follows. First one, the Fort Meadows Commission will require $1,200 to increase the fuel reimbursement for members. Included in this transfer is $117,400 for 4 police officers' retirements, $41,700 for 1 firefighter's retirement, and an additional $235,000 for anticipated contractual negotiations. The Finance Office will require a transfer in the amount of $25,100 from vacant principal clerk position to cover the newly created replacement position of treasurer/payroll manager. Additionally, a transfer in the amount of $156,803 to offset the Assabet Valley Regional Technical High School amended assessment is enclosed documentation. The Collector's Office will require a transfer of $117,000 to cover the cost of tax title services for delinquent properties. The IT Department is requiring $59,500 to cover the phone upgrades for the city and school department, keeping us compliant with the state regulations. The Fire Department will require a transfer for $86,500 for equipment repair and maintenance, and emergency events that require mutual aid and increased rehabilitation expenses. The Department of Public Works is requesting a transfer in the amount of $730,500 to cover various expenses as outlined in Commissioner Dival's enclosed letter. Human Resources is requesting $22,775 for the HR Director's salary line item and anticipated additional training requests by the department heads. The Board of Health will require $1,072 to cover sick leave buyback longevity that was mistakenly omitted from the FY 2023 budget. The Legal Office will require $48,500 to fully fund outside counsel due to unbudgeted services. I anticipate there will be questions in my staff, and I look forward to discussing at a future Finance Committee meeting. Sincerely, Arthur G. Vigent, Mayor. And for the Finance Committee, if it's helpful, we can go through the individual. We can start with the one that's page 6-3, and we can go right in that order. So if you do have any particular questions in regards to any of those line items. And I'll open that up to the Finance Committee. And also, just a note too, we see the memos in there as well included from department heads. So nothing on 6-3, 6-7. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Could you specify? Could you specify what department as well? That might be helpful.
Yeah. Okay, we could do that. Yeah, so if you follow the mayor's items, the first one is a total of $395,300 for the total, and that includes the Fort Meadow, and then the next one was for a total of $298,903. And on mine, that is 6-7. And that one is included with that one is the Assabet Valley Regional Assessment Amendment. And then the next item was for $59,500. And that was for the IT department with the telephone upgrades. And then next was the $86,500, and that was under the fire department for vehicle repair and maintenance. Councilor Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize because I'm having a little trouble following along with the direct items. But I did have some questions related to the DPW transfers. Would it be helpful to bring up whoever here is representing DPW?
Yes, absolutely. Commissioner Duvall.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good evening, Commissioner. Thank you for being here. I just had a couple questions. I know in the past when you've come before, we've talked about how there's been an increase in the cost of sludge, things like recycling, all of those costs have been going up. And I know we have been drawing from some of the line items that there was solid waste disposal, that cost has gone down or maybe less than anticipated. I'm wondering if you could give some context to that and if that's something that's a trend moving forward or just happened to be in this current interval of time.
Sure. So what we're talking about is sludge production at our east plant and our west plant. And there's a couple of things at play. Number one is we build into the budget some amount of contingency when it comes to sludge. We are uncertain at times what the concentration of solids coming in will be. We're also uncertain on how well the treatment process will work, and that is subject to a lot of variables, weather being one, drought, and how well we'll call them the bugs work in the treatment process, and how much the waste is consumed by the bacteria and otherwise. So so it's hard to know exactly how much sludge we're going to generate, but it's important for us to have some contingency amount in there if something should go awry. And so we build that into the budget each year. Now that we're midway through, we've taken half of our risk away. We know where we've been for the first 6 or so months, so that reduces how much we need in contingency going forward. But we also have to guard against sludge production going up, and that's why I say we build in that contingency. There's been times in the past where we've had to pump liquid sludge out of our plants, and that's quite costly. So we have to think about all these sorts of things because we've got an endless river of wastewater coming into these plants, and we know we're going to be creating sludge. We just don't always know how much it's going to be.
Okay, well, we appreciate that context because it wasn't as clear necessarily from the description, and it's helpful to know that you all have built in that leeway in the budget. We really appreciate that so that we have this funding available. I have another question. I know, and this is something I know we've seen in the past, but I was just curious. I know hiring is difficult. A lot of this money is being pulled from, vacancies, which makes sense that it's available and something that we should be utilizing. And I know in another area they said there was an overtime transfer. The money was going towards overtime. So are there certain positions where we're still looking to fill those, or is it sort of not the market right now for those positions to be filled?
Yeah, it is exceedingly difficult to find employees. I think that's not a surprise to most people. And we're just having a very hard time attracting folks to come in as laborers and equipment operators. And when we don't have the head count, then obviously that requires us to incur overtime expenses because we have to get the job done. So that's what you're seeing there. We're trading the vacancies. I wish we had those positions filled. We're trading that for the overtime cost. Okay, well, if in the future when you look at the salaries that are being posted or things, if that needs to be adjusted, to be competitive, please, I'm sure you're in touch with the mayor's office, but letting us know as well, I think is really helpful. And I know we've done that for other positions in the past, and it does seem like we want to be in the market compared to other communities. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Orm.
Thank you, and I am having trouble following too because I used the information we received for our city council meeting, so I'm going
apologize.
through that.
I'm sorry, the numbers on the top, I apologize.
6.3 was on that, but then looking for the DPW, I had an index, but.
Thank you.
So, Commissioner, back to the sludge. Looks like $257,000 was removed because of less sludge anticipated. I'm correct with that, right? About $250,000? Because you have it in 2 transfer pages.
So the total amount we're transferring out of sludge is $475,000.
475, so I'm off by more than 200. So when you budget that, what % do you put as an over consideration, as, you know, contingency plan when you're looking at that budget? And what is that budget per year for the sludge?
So in terms of a contingency percentage, it's hard for me to give you that number. And partly that's because there are so many unknowns, as I referenced before. So we look at historical costs, we look at built-in contract increases, you know, on disposing of the sludge. We've got contracts, and those, as you imagine, those costs go up each year. So it's sort of an amalgam of looking at all of these sorts of, you know, data points and coming up with what we feel is a comfortable number. And we may be right, we may be wrong. So far this year, we've been right. And so we're able to find that $475,000 and apply it
That's
elsewhere.
quite a bit of money to find, and
Yeah,
I'm not complaining by any means.
Right,
It's
right.
just, when it comes time for the budget, I will probably question your percentage that you increase it by from the year, well, it's gonna show in your report, but it's built into solid waste. So if I remember right, it's a separate line item, correct, sludge disposal?
Yeah, we separated it out. Yeah.
So we'll be able to determine from this year to what you're proposing next year and the year before to see what those percentages are. But that's quite a bit of money, and we're grateful that you have that for the other needs of the city, all these transfers we're seeing, and including you losing operators. We're not too happy about that. I'm not too happy about that, but again, that's extra money. And I had one other question. I think it was basically in your description, building maintenance needs, the building repairs. You have on that repair maintenance, and one is repair maintenance buildings, 91,529 and 177,563. So that's a little bit of change. You know, I'd say close to 260, 280. What is that for? These the building repairs, it says repair maintenance buildings. What's happening with that?
So are you referencing the transfer of 20,000 and the 42,300?
Yes, I'm sorry, giving you a bill. Yes, the 62, what's happening there?
So mainly what's happening there is a new standard that's come down for elevators, the operation of elevators. And essentially, there's this new requirement where we have to put in the system where firefighters can override what happens to an elevator in the condition that a fire alarm may be going off. So they can manually manipulate, with a key on how the cars go up and down. Yes. Previous to that, it was if there's a fire alarm, the elevator goes to a preset floor, and that's about it. Now fire departments have the opportunity to decide what floor to send the car to, to better, combat a fire or some emergency condition.
Or get someone if it's an unsafe condition if you're not on that floor. So I can understand. I just didn't know what it was for. And
so, those have been costing, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 an elevator. And so those are adding up pretty quick.
And this is for the entire city?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I know you handle the entire city, but I wasn't for sure specifically where that was for. But thank you for that information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Councilor. Any further questions for Commissioner Duval? Oh, Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you expect the legal fees to continue with Northborough, or is this it?
Question I really can't answer.
Okay.
It's up to the courts, a special master. I don't know how far it'll go. This is the amount of money that I can transfer now. What is needed in the future, I couldn't tell you.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why it's coming out of DPW's budget?
I don't have a reason for that, except that's where it's come out of the last several years, so we'll keep that going.
So there's a history with that?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dumas. Any further questions for Commissioner Duval? Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay, so I did the line item for the DPW. Next is Human Resources, Board of Health, and Legal Office. Any questions in regards to those? Council Orman?
I remember I put a note, I was just curious, it says the extra funds are needed for HR directors. So how many directors have we had that we had to supplement additional funds to? Is it just the person that covered? Or is it, did we have several of them in there between?
Madam, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. President.
If I can help, Councilman. So when the prior HR director left, there was salary incurred in hiring on the new one, trying to make up the difference in funding. There's no increase in pay. It's just paying out what we owed the prior HR director.
So where it says several, it's just not the HR department, it's actually other departments, correct?
I'll leave that up to how the,
Because I saw several and I said, okay, what's going on? Maybe.
John, you want to come up?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening.
Good evening.
Over the course of this past fiscal year, myself and 2 others have held this role.
Okay.
So we all have different pay rates, and so this is the amount to.
Microphone, you just tap the button. Yep.
So
You don't have to hold it.
Okay. There were 3 individuals, myself included, holding this role, and each had different pay rates. So when they set the budget, it was one pay rate. So this is just making a wash. It doesn't affect my pay rate.
I wasn't
That was
concerned about your pay rate.
Oh, just making sure.
I want to know who all these HR directors were.
Oh, no, it's just a transfer
It
of
sounds
one
like
tax.
fire, and I figured it was within your department,
Yep.
too, while you were going through the transition. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, going down, any questions in regards to Board of Health or the Legal Department office? Council?
Well, I just had a quick question. I know there were funds being pulled from like a COVID-19 fund, and I'm sure the rate of using those funds is no longer as needed, and it just said funds no longer needed. Was this, I'm assuming, part of the budget but not grant funding? I just wanted a clarification about which funds this COVID-19 line item was.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, someone can answer that question, please?
Oh, you wanna?
Never say anything anymore.
We just want to interact. Yes.
Thank you, Auditor Smith. Thank you.
Good evening, Auditor. Thank you.
So, I can't tell you exactly when, but right from the beginning of COVID, the city sent out a request to the council for funds to put aside for COVID, not knowing if we were going to receive anything from CARES, et cetera. Then, last fiscal year, I believe we sent out another request for a transfer to put money into the COVID-19 account for stipends for employees that proved that they had gotten the boosters, the shot in the boosters. We're at a point now where this money is what's left over in that account, and we don't foresee any more COVID-19 related accounts. So we decided to use this for mid-year transfers.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. That's very helpful.
Thank you, Auditor Smith, because I know last year's mid-year transfers, that included those incentives as well in that one.
Correct.
Thank you, City Auditor.
Chair,
Council Rubin.
if nobody else on the finance, while Ms. Smith is here, can you explain the Assabet Valley Regional transfer with the funds that you just described, where they're coming from? I know there was a discussion prior to the budget about us having an excess and we could use it and now we can't use it.
Yes, so if you recall back at the budget hearings, a year ago almost, I had stated to the council that we didn't get a formal letter from Assabet saying what the amount was. We based it on the budget that was submitted to us, so that's the number we went on. And you're correct that there was excess money that came in that they were going to allocate to the different communities. Long story short, Assabet contacted the city, and I don't have it in front of me, saying that they miscalculated the amount of the assessments for the communities, and that we owed them an additional amount of money, totaling $156,000.
So do you know what happened with their extra money that they were going to be dividing up to communities?
It still was divided, but Patrick, I don't know if you want to speak to this without me trying to find I think it was the way how they presented it, allocated it, provided in their budget that we owed them additional monies.
Good evening, everybody. To sort of reiterate what Diane was mentioning, the correspondence, there was a turnover in staff with Assabet probably just a year before the budget happened. We had one set of communication that we got on a regular basis. So when we got to last year in the budget season, we didn't get any communication. We just sort of got a different sense of this is the number that we need. And then we had our budget meetings in March. So based on the memo that Diane's referring to, we then worked with that number. In September of this year, after we had already gotten our budget figures, we had formally voted on our warrant and made the budget formal, we got communication from Assabet saying that, as Diane's mentioned, that this number was not correct and that we had to now pay. But nowhere in that correspondence did they give us any other support, direction, or concrete information on what they did. The communication has been very minimal.
Thank you.
And thank you, Councilor Roby. And I know that came up during the budget. Going forward, do you think there'll be more or improved communications in regards to things like that?
Well, I think one of the things that I'm seeing is that we had a formal memo that we got from Assabet up until fiscal year 22 budget. Now what we're seeing is a basic flow chart that discloses each community. It sort of balances out to zero. So we have the gross number that we have with their OPEB and their other numbers, and then we have to break out the securities, the bonds that we have to pay, and we have two forms of payment. So we're paying debt in one payment, we're billed, and then the other one is just the overall quarterly payment that we make. And to date, now it seems that that's the only sheet that we get. We actually used to get a whole budget book or a whole budget presentation.
Yeah,
so
it's as Patrick said, with new people coming on board, they're presenting it differently, and we're working with what they're giving us, so.
Oh, yeah.
Throw in there, so we're not getting a number of students that are from Marlborough? We're not getting any kind of information?
We are getting a percentage, but actually that's about the only other piece of information that I didn't share you that we're getting. Actually, I don't have it with me because we get one sheet of paper, and it's basically a colored chart, and it has 5 lines of the overall gross, and then a couple of line items, and then we have percentage that we are in whole for the community that we are in, and then we have a number of students, and that's just about what we get.
Have you ever contacted any of the towns who would be voting on this well before we ever vote on it as a city to see if they have questions?
I'm sure too, just to, last fiscal year, we did receive, I believe, their entire budget book.
But it usually comes after where, like, we need it when we're working, so we have to pull together what they're giving us. And just to be transparent, the information that we're sharing with you this evening, we received on Friday. Oh, jeez. Just in time to answer your question, and we're in the throes of being in a budget, just to be transparent and direct.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. As been stated a few times, Assabet was going through some changes in personnel last year. Things kind of got, the communication wasn't like it had been in the past. We have received, finance books over the years. Last year was a little bit different all the way around. This year I anticipate that we'll be back on track. In fact, received a email from them today. So we're hoping they're back on track, and this year's budget's going to be a lot smoother. Again, keeping in mind that they need 4 votes of the 7-member communities. So We pay half the bills, but we have nil for a say. They go to the smaller communities, they get their 4 votes, and we can ask all the questions we want, but it doesn't do us any good. So unless they have a capital request, and we gave them one a few years ago, so until they're looking for more capital items, then we have a yes, no vote, and every community has to agree. But right now, moving forward, we're anticipating things are going to be much better this year.
Thank you, Councilor Orr.
Okay, and just to get back to the assessment, they're asking, we're looking at, I believe, $156,803, and that came off that memo. The memo was dated September 26 and talked about a first quarter assessment. Are we expecting to see any further assessments for another quarter?
To be determined.
Be determined,
You
okay.
would think we wouldn't, but we were surprised to see that. I think it was a result of a prior year adjustment, and so they addressed it when they saw it, and so we won't know that unless they get another prior year adjustment again.
And if I might, Counselor, it was my decision to put this payment off until we did the mid-year transfers. We did get that letter from them back then, but I had talked to the finance team about just hold off. They're not going to go out of business over there over $100,000. So
And
with the mid-year transfers, and here we are today.
I respect that. When I read first quarter assessment, I said, well, we're probably going to see a second quarter assessment.
No, this is the
okay.
number
Beautiful. For this fiscal year.
for this fiscal year.
Excellent, because that was concerning. I'm saying, okay, are we getting another one of these memos in a week or two?
No, I sure hope not. I don't anticipate that at all.
Okay, and then, Mr. Chair, just one other quick
Yes,
question.
yes.
The COVID funding that we're talking about that's being used for some of this, how much was in there? And I know you're looking at 194 to take out. How much was in that budget when we first started?
When we first started, at the start of COVID, it was a $100,000 transfer, started the whole thing.
Okay.
And we carried that money for a couple of fiscal years because we were getting other funding that we were
ARPA.
utilizing.
Okay. Was ARPA one of those funds?
CARES was the
CARES,
first
yes, okay.
monies that came in. So we were using CARES funds before touching this money. And then, as I said earlier, we sent down an additional transfer for the stipends for the employees that was added to this account. And I don't know if I have it with me, I don't remember what the amount of that transfer was.
When we did the amount of the calculation, we took every person that we thought could possibly be eligible for that, and we funded it so we would fund it full. And so the residual that you're seeing now means that everybody that was able to get it, got it, and then the group of people that didn't, for whatever reason, and now we're returning that money back.
And that's the rest of the funding? There'll be no funding in this reserve fund? I'll call it a reserve fund for COVID?
No, this is going to bring it down to zero.
Zero, okay, well, hopefully you won't have to come back. I pray for that, but, you know, the possibility's there if you're bringing it down to zero. And Board of Health, have they seen this and agree with it?
Yes, I spoke with John Garside, because they were still utilizing this somewhat to have a part-time nurse on board up until, I think, December, or towards the end of the calendar year. They no longer needed the part-time nurse to come in, so he gave his blessing on this, that he no longer needed those funds.
Well, thank you for your information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, Councilman. Councilor Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is not on the topic we were just on, but probably could be addressed by both of you. I'm curious, I know in some of the transfers to give sick leave buyback for some retirements, I know we've had a lot of retirements, which makes sense. And I guess since this is a mid-year transfer, a lot of these, were they anticipated? And are we aware of upcoming retirements that we're going to be building into the budget moving forward?
So for this particular transfer, it was for firefighters and police officers that we did budget them in reserve for salary. They are going to be retiring as we speak through June 30th, so that's why we're moving the money in. And we've exhausted that account. That's being brought down to zero as well.
And then to anticipate your question, next year when we do the budget, we'll do the same exercise. We'll reach out to department heads and we'll find out who's retiring and if there's longevity or other forms. And then next year's budget number should hopefully take care of all of that. And then, you know, we'll be back to square one.
Okay, yeah, I was just thinking ahead because I know there can be a rate of retirements and us being aware of that as we're, you know, having trouble filling certain positions, but we have a lot of people retiring, just trying to keep track of that in each budget cycle is really important. So I appreciate you all getting ahead of this for the upcoming cycle. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, Councilor Brown. Any further questions from any other councilors? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion. I'm sorry, what's that, Councilor?
I didn't have my mic on. Are we voting just on what we just discussed, or the entire package?
The entire package.
Okay, I have a few other
Absolutely.
questions.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
why, if I may, okay. For IT, that's self-explanatory. I'm glad to see we're up to par on that now. Fire department is where I had some questions. Are they here, or should I ask you?
Sorry,
A
I'll
fire,
ask the
sorry,
mayor.
fire department.
I'll answer what I can, Counselor. Our chief is under the COVID weather.
Okay.
So I'll answer what I can. If there's something outstanding, then we can clean that part up on Monday night. But-
Yeah, and the service issues with the fleet was my main question. On one of the top line, I don't know if you want the page, but it was 612 from our agenda information. It says cost increases due to service issues with fleet, which brought to my mind, are we getting to the point where we have to maybe look at some of the fleet for capital projects, like another engine, or?
We have one vehicle that was just put into service about a month ago, a squad vehicle. She's really been looking forward to getting that. It's going to save a lot of wear and tear on our ladders and our pumper trucks. It's much smaller, but it's kind of self-contained. It has everything in it. So that was put in place, I want to say 2 months ago now. And we have the ladder that was approved by this body about a year ago, and we're anticipating getting that in the next few months. So we are doing replacements. It just takes so long. Chief was telling me we got in under the wire with the ladder truck. Now it's a 2-year wait to order a ladder truck. So it's just, everything is so back ordered. But like I said, we have one we just received, and the other one's hopefully not too far away.
And I can give him a call later. I'm just concerned about the 196,000. What else is going on with his fleet? You know, and is he going to tell me, well, one of the engines is starting to rot? You know, I'm not going to say he is, but I was very concerned about the 96,000. I'm sorry, 934. I can ask him on the sidebar. It's just trying to think capital, where we're going with our capital.
Yeah, no, and I'm going to be coming down with a capital list in the next few weeks for equipment. Like I said, when I came down with the street construction and infrastructure, I would come down later for the other things that we may be using some cash for. So, but I wanted to get those streets moving quickly, so that's why I separated them.
Okay, thank you. And one other question, just within that, the fire department, it mentions quite a few vacancies. How are we doing with the staffing at the fire department?
We're doing pretty good. The problem is with both police and fire. Although we go to them before every budget and say, who has any thoughts of retiring in the next 12 months so we can put it into the reserve for salaries, there's no requirement for them to actually do that. And we've had police officers in the past go in on a Friday night and put the badge and the gun on the chief's desk, and they're gone. And then they start the processing for using any time they have and coming to them. So we've had discussions with the police department, and hopefully we can get somewhere with both departments on giving us some notice with some kind of, whether it's a carrot or a stick, getting us some notice so we can put people in place. It takes about a year to get a new police officer on board, and it takes us about 6 months if we can get someone into the academy for the fire department. So it's a long process, and we really can't start the process until we know someone's leaving. If they tell us they're leaving September 1st, I still can't start the process because they could pull their pay. They don't file anything until that point. It's just a, hey, I think I'm going September 1st. Some age out. We know the ones that are aging out, we know that once they hit 65, we will be replacing them. But both chiefs have been doing a great job in trying to get ahead of the retirements, and I've given them both a little leeway. You know, if we're pretty confident that someone's leaving, there's an opening in one of the academies, let's get someone in there. So we're going through the process in both, but it's a struggle when people come in last minute. We don't have people lined up because, like I said, it takes so long to get them on the streets.
And you said aged out. I didn't realize, is there something in the books that say?
I believe it's 65 for both police and fire, but
okay, thank you. Yeah, I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure it's 65 for both. We've had some of our, I know in the fire department, we've had people down there working the day of their birthday, because they
don't want to leave. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Am I close, John?
Yeah, 65.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any further questions?
If I may again, Mr. Chair, sorry, I'll go to the paperwork I need to. I had a question on legal services. I know just, that's the last one, yes, that we had legal service.
Solicitor? City Solicitor?
And it's an easy question, so it won't take long.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And just curious, on that request, and it's not a lot, but is there a reason why it wasn't budgeted last year for that? And I notice we don't have a paralegal at this time.
Through the chair, so some of the expenses we incur in any fiscal year depend on the calendar. So a number of matters we may have in the office shift, dates depending on the court and arbitrator. So that's primarily the reason why some of these costs, which may have occurred earlier or later, end up coming in another fiscal year.
Worked its way to the mid-year transfer. Okay,
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Chair, if there's no other discussion, I would make a motion with the request for a suspension to approve the mid-year transfers.
Thank you for reminding me. I will second that. Motion has been made and seconded to approve order number 23-100-8806, communication from Mayor Vigent, together with mid-year transfer request totaling $1,643,050 from various departments for FY23, which moves funds from and to accounts as outlined in the transfer sheets with a suspension on Monday night's council meeting. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Councilor Harm. Okay, moving on to order number 23-100-8807, communication from Mayor Vigent requesting an increase in the spending limit for the Public Safety Revolving Fund for the remainder of fiscal year 2023 to $203,000, together with proposed order that the City Council authorizes increasing the maximum amount that they may be expended from the Public Safety Revolving Fund during FY 2023 as set forth in Council Order number 22-100-8604B-1 from $120,000 to $203,000. And I'll read the letter submitted by the Mayor. Honorable President Ossing and Councilors, enclosed for your review and acceptance is an order to increase the spending limit for the Public Safety Revolving Fund for the remainder of fiscal year 2023 to $203,000. Patriot Ambulance pays annual dispatch fees to the city in the amount of $116,869.80 that may be used for any public safety expenditures. Enclosed is a summary of the account and expenditures to date. Chief Breen and Chief George anticipate utilizing these funds for additional training and equipment upgrades through the year's end. Sincerely, Arthur G. Vigent, Mayor. Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll take care of it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I know, obviously, Chief Breen isn't here.
Yeah, no, I actually am requesting this because obviously we're up against $120,000 this year. There's still funds in the account. I've really encouraged both chiefs to utilize this fund because we hadn't been for a number of years. We hadn't utilized it as much as we should. I did get an increase from Patriot Ambulance, I think, starting a year or two ago.
Very nice.
So we're just looking to continue utilizing this money with it sitting there in the account. So there's still $80,000 there, and we're hoping to do some other things with both police and fire, but I did want to show you a breakdown of how we've been spending it. It's not like it's used in other areas. Obviously, there's a lot of important things that both public safety departments need to do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will open up to the committee and any councilors. Council Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, in the past, I know you said that there was a sort of a culture of not really utilizing the fund fully. Was that just because people were drawing from other line items, or they just historically?
Okay. I hate to keep doing this to you. Can you repeat it again?
No, it's okay. Yes, I was saying because you mentioned that the line item for this revolving account had not been fully utilized in the past.
Yeah.
I'm curious why that was. Was that just a culture?
Yeah, I think, first of all, something that really helped out was allowing us to spend it on additional things within the department, not just training. It was tough to do $100,000 in training between both departments. So now it's opened up so I can use it for other things within the departments. With the approval, you have approved that, and we changed it in the contract when we did a new contract a few years ago. So we can use it for other public safety things. We bought, you'll see here, $54,000. We bought a police vehicle last year. It was still one vehicle that, the chief was looking for, and we figured we'd tap this money since it's just sitting there. We don't want it sitting. But when they request money for additional training or to cover overtime costs or something for training, those are the types of things that come down on a regular basis. It's just not usually big line items. And now that we're taking in over $100,000 a year, it's just trying to utilize those funds.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Orm.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we at a good number of 203,000, or should that even be more?
Well, that's the balance for, that's
Yes, I can
all we'll
see
be
that.
taking in this year. So next year with the allotment, we'll be way down from there. But for the balance of this year, it's important to, like I said, use the rest of those funds.
Are you expecting that the ending balance to be about that 86,000 that it
I'm
started
hoping the
at?
ending balance is close to zero.
So you want them to
And
use
then
it
we'll get a
right down.
replenishment from Patriot.
Okay, so you want them to use it down, but we may not have $203,000 next year if they use it down to
Probably
zero.
not.
And the reason I ask, you mentioned it just a few minutes ago with the fire department, the
Yep.
use of their vehicles, trying not to get the
Yep.
engines out. They go out for every ambulance call, correct?
That's correct.
So I'm thinking this would be an appropriate fund, as you did for the police cruiser, maybe someday to pull money out of this for the vehicle that follows the ambulance, because they're paying indirectly, Patriot's paying for our services too, so.
Yeah, the only thing on that is those police vehicles are a lot less expensive than those fire vehicles. They're just
Maybe a
tremendous.
portion.
I think the squad we just bought, it doesn't look like anything special. It's a pretty truck, but I think it was I want to say $80,000. Council Larson, how much was the squad?
$243,000.
I was off a little bit, but they're expensive vehicles, whereas, the police vehicles are all usually under $50,000 unless they're specially equipped or something.
Okay, well, it's good to keep in mind, we're getting
Yeah.
117,000 almost from
Yeah, I just
Patriot.
wouldn't want to accumulate this line item to
No,
get enough to buy a
I don't
fire
disagree.
vehicle.
No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any further questions from the other councilors? If seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Motion's been made and I will second that to approve. Order number 23-100-8807, communication from Mayor Vigent requesting an increase in the spending limit for the Public Safety Revolving Fund for the remainder of fiscal year 2023 to $203,000, together with the proposed order that the City Council authorizes increasing the maximum amount that may be expended from Public Safety Revolving Fund during FY 2023 as set forth in Council Order Number 22-100-8604B-1 from $120,000 to $203,000. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Moving on to the last item on the agenda, it is Order Number 23-100-8808. Communication from Mayor Vigent together with a proposed order to amend the Senior Citizen Property Tax Work-Off Program to increase the amount of the tax deduction from $1,000 to $1,500 for eligible senior citizens. And I'll begin by reading the letter submitted by Mayor Vigent. Honorable President Ossing and councilors, enclosed for your review and acceptance is a proposed amendment order that will allow the city to increase the amount of tax reduction from $1,000 to $1,500 to eligible senior citizens who participate in the Senior Citizen Tax Work-Off Program in exchange for 100 hours of work. These changes will be effective March 1st, 2023, based on City Council approval. The program will continue to be funded through the overlay account. This increase will be beneficial to our eligible seniors who are on fixed incomes and struggle with the increase in groceries and the average cost of living expenses. Please let me know if you have any further questions. Sincerely, Arthur G. Vigent, Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm in full support. I was happy to see this. I think the residents will like this. It's been a very successful program over the years, and I'll let you kind of explain.
No, it's been a good program, and thank you very much for allowing us to go with it. But with everyone else seeing an increase in minimum wage, although we're not covered or required to be covered by that, I thought it was important to kick it up to where they would be getting the $15 an hour. We get obviously a lot more production out of some of those seniors than that. So it's a great program. We get some good people in the city that have been working at it for years. So I'd love to be able to fill some more spots, but in the meantime, I want to kick this up a little bit and try to help them out with some of their bills today. So.
No, it's been very successful. I know in the years past, there's been like a waiting list or the next list.
Some years there has been.
Yes.
Some people are regular users of the program, which is great. Some department heads are regular users of the program, but we have people in different areas in the city, and we try to tie them into areas that they have some background in, so they're not completely foreign to what they're doing. But it's been a good program. We want to keep it going and expand on it.
Thank you. I'll open up to the Finance Council Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mayor. I think it's great to raise the number for this. I'm glad to hear it and appreciate that it was matching, you know, a minimum wage, if that was sort of how the program was breaking down. I'm wondering currently how many people are able to access the program. I know Councilor Irish mentioned there had been a wait list in the past. Is there like a cap on how many people the city can give the program to? Because people are obviously very invested in using it.
So I'm gonna do something I haven't done yet, but the two people that run the program really is Trish Pope and Trish Bernard. So I'm gonna ask Trish to come up and answer those questions.
Thank you, Trish. Good evening.
Sorry, Trish.
I believe we allow or cap at 30.
Okay, that's great that, you know, 30 people are able to access it. I know the mayor mentioned people might be repeat users of the program. Is there any effort to kind of rotate who is able to have access so that it's not always the same amount of people in case other people are interested each year?
Yeah, Trish Pope does a lottery if there is a need to have one.
Okay, so there have been a variety of different people who have been able to access it?
Yes, and I think, you know, this year we have a lot more younger seniors that are eligible that have been applying.
Great, and then
skill sets.
Just to clarify too, it would have to be completion of the full 100 hours. There isn't like if you completed half, you would get half of the write-off, correct?
No, it's the completion of the full amount.
Okay, and that's just tracked internally?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm really glad to see this. I hope it's, widely distributed so people are aware of it, especially given the number. I'm sure you all will do a press release, and I'm excited to see that this increase is happening, and I'm in full support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Aide Bernard. Oh, Council.
Do you want to go? Go ahead.
I just want to, we were given a document from our clerical staff from 2012, which I don't know if we've had any changes since then, because this is what she sent us. But it has 25 participants.
I think we increased it, and I'm not sure what year that was.
Okay, so that's
There's
not the
another
most
from
recent.
2019.
Correct.
It says 30.
Yes.
But it also says that there could be more without prior city council approval, so we could, it sounds like extend it to more people if city
Oh,
council.
okay,
approved
I
it.
don't have that.
So,
Mr. President?
Mr. Chair, so Council Dumas is correct. It's capped at 30 people, but we can use fractions of people. But to Council Perlman, we haven't been filling it. So it's not like there's a line out the door to get into the program right now. I just don't want anybody misconception thinking that we're not, anybody right now that wants it that's eligible can apply and get on it, but, and there's several reasons. COVID kept a lot of people away, right? So that didn't do it, but I don't want people to think it's full right now. It's not.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's a good point, because other communities experienced the same issues with the COVID. Some of the seniors weren't coming back. And also, I believe, once they complete their 100 hours, they touch base with the assessor's office, and they calculate that all in there. Council Orm.
If I can, just lead right off of what was discussed, and the mayor couldn't have said it better right now. Eligible seniors who are on fixed incomes struggle with increases in grocery and average cost of living. I think everyone's facing that, but it can be very critical for someone that's getting a fixed income. So I would suggest to the mayor's office that I'm in support if you need to increase the number. And if you need to speak to finance because of the need of funding, I would suggest, and I'm sorry to hear the numbers were down, but I think COVID had a lot to do with it. Now the economy is changing. The benefits to people, say on SNAP, are changing. They may need to come back and work 100 hours a week. So you got my support if you need to increase the number. I can't make the change, but I just want the mayor to know that. I'm sure this full council is in full support if we need to increase the 30 participants. Thank you.
Can I just do I'm not sure if the mayor knows, if I recall reading in City and Town or DLS, one of those, this was actually a law that we agreed to, and the state sets the amount. We don't set it, and they increased it recently?
Yeah, it was increased along the way to $1,500. So that's why, in reading that, we wanted to go up to that number. But we're capped at these numbers. You're correct. So, and it does, this is money that eventually comes out of the overlay. So it's not huge money, but it comes from somewhere. It gets allocated out to the rest of the city. So,
right.
No, the program's been good. And if we have an opportunity to expand it because of more people and more the other thing is finding the jobs for the people to do. Because as I state, when we do the summer programs with the high school kids and the college kids and the seniors, I don't want someone hanging around. I'm looking for those jobs you don't have time to do. There's a great group of people that can do them.
Thank you, Councilor Rubin.
Did you have another question?
Oh, I was just going to motion to approve
was
if
gonna
there were
do
no
the same.
further questions.
I do actually,
Councilor Rubin.
Mayor, since you brought it up, I know in looking at the document that we were provided, it does talk about the mayor's office furnishing an annual report. I don't know that we've ever had one, or if we have, it's been a while.
I think it's been a bit, I think.
And as you mentioned, it's at the annual tax classification process that the mayor shall forward a request to fund the program. But
If I haven't, Council, I'll get one down to you.
all right,
Thank
so
you.
is this a line item in our budget, or is it done when we
It's in
do?
I believe it comes, there's a separate transfer out of the overlay account.
Okay.
And that would be also used for any abatement processes and any other kind of fees like that, I believe. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
It's actually, the overlay account is really set up for abatements and those types of things. And
Yes.
that's why we have it in there. We have a certain amount that we take off at the bottom and add every year. But I can get that report for you, Counselor, if it hasn't come down. If it has come down, we'll bring you a copy. If it hasn't, then we'll get it down to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any further discussion? I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Motion's been made, and I'll second that to approve
Mr.
order
Chair,
number. Oh,
with a friendly amendment for suspension.
thank you, Council, I'll remember that. Motion has been made and seconded to approve order number 23-100-8808, communication from Mayor Vigent, together with proposed order to amend the senior citizen property tax work-off program to increase the amount of the tax deduction from $1,000 to $1,500 for eligible senior citizens, as well as including a suspension for the next council meeting. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carries 5-0.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion was made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? We are adjourned at 7:25.